Welcome, Facebook friends and family, to another edition of the March for Unity, Civility, and Political Engagement. I appreciate you joining us, whether that is live in the webinar, the Zoom webinar, where you'll be able to ask questions and receive answers from these three fine gentlemen that I'll introduce in just a minute. Or if you're joining on Facebook to see that streamed live, we will unfortunately not be able to answer questions from that forum. Please log on to the Zoom webinar if you're looking to ask questions. Or if you're watching this in the future, whether it's a week, a month, or a year from now, I hope that the information here will shed some light on the perspectives that these three gentlemen will share, which are quite diverse, and also offer some solutions to issues, problems and challenges that we're facing today and things that we've faced for a very long time. Before I introduce them, I want to reintroduce the March for Unity, Civility, and Political Engagement. This is a march that I started with a couple of my friends when in February of this year, 2020, we came to the conclusion or really to the point, in my opinion, that we needed to express ourselves in a way to show that we wanted change and that we wanted to bring people to the table to listen to one another in order to come up with the best strategies and solutions to these very complex problems that we're facing, as opposed to speaking past one another, speaking poorly of one another, and in a destructive way. This is one small step that me and these three fellows, as well as quite a few of other panelists, have tried to work towards actually creating a constructive, safe space to speak about the different perspectives and opinions that we have, so that we have better understanding of the backgrounds and therefore being able to come up with better solutions. We will continue to do this as we've done it monthly on the Tuesday following the first Monday of each month, leading up to Election Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our work is not over at 5 p.m. is what we say. With that, I am going to introduce our first panelist. It's Brian Halstead. It's been great to see him for the first time. He's a client of mine that has worked as a property manager in Florida and is a real estate investor himself that hails from Jamaica. I'm so happy to see you for the first time, Brian, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Hi, Simmy. Thank you for having me. It's indeed a pleasure to see you myself, and I'm looking forward to participate.
Great, thanks, Brian. Shahriar Etemadi is usually called Uncle when I speak to him, but I'm going to try to hold off on that. He is an urban planner. He's been doing it for 37 years, based out of Columbia, Maryland. He's originally from Iran, and he is an immigrant like my parents, and like Brian and like so many of us in America. And I'm looking forward to picking his brain as it pertains to urban planning, but of course, his background being an immigrant, I'm sure will inform some of the solutions and some of the conversations we'll have. Thank you for being on, Shahriar.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Good to see you. And thank you for that comment, Arun. It's good to see you join as well. Moving back to the video conference, Gator is a friend of mine that I've met last year and I've gotten to know. He is one cool dude. He's from Georgia, from a small town in Georgia, Thomaston, and he's moved to Atlanta to pursue DJing and producing full-time, although he has had a background in design. I'm really looking forward to his perspective, having stepped into multiple worlds, whether that's small town to big town, country to urban, and the cultural differences there, especially from going into the hip hop scene as a DJ and a producer. Thanks for stepping on, Gator, and speaking up.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to not only supporting you, but supporting this whole movement you're trying to take steps towards.
For sure. And you've done just that, not just as a panelist, but also as someone that has his own podcasts and own programs and is able to offer feedback. I really appreciate it.
Of course, man.
And with that, we are entering the second phase of the program in which I'm going to be asking preset questions. I'm going to start in the order that I introduced everyone. So Brian, this first question is directed to you. We have discussed the impact of racism and stereotyping, you and I, and you've shared that you did not experience this otherness label when you were in Jamaica. What is one practical way that everyday Americans can unite to address this divide, in your opinion, Brian?
Well, growing up in Jamaica, we don't usually experience, racism in the form that, we see here. We come to realize here. So most times when Jamaicans arrive here in America, they don't look for racism because it's not so prominent in their culture. But class is prominent in Jamaican culture. And of course, in almost every society, but everything is attainable to a Jamaican. You change your class through hard work, and that's completely achievable. We know that we're capable of doing anything that we put our mind to. There's no barriers where race is concerned. So when we come here to America, we are completely oblivious to that fact. In Jamaica, in fact, we really love people of all cultures, and we're hospitable people. We welcome people to our country. We treat them very well. Tourism is a big sector in Jamaica as well. So we learn that it's part of who we are as Jamaican people. So when we come here, and maybe someone who's born here, an African American, they might experience or be more sensitive to racism than we are. That's not to underestimate the feeling that they have, or to say that it isn't real, but to say that it takes time for a Jamaican to really pick up on those little things. Mind you, in recent years, it's becoming easier because of media and our exposure to so many aspects of the world. The world is becoming a smaller place. So mind you, that is now becoming real to everybody, no matter where you live. So my recommendation or my view, as far as our Americans, including myself, we can move forward to eliminating this scourge of racism, is basically see yourself as one people. See yourself as one people. Remove this myth of race. I think it has to be done from the aspect of school, of education. Make it known to kids very early that race is indeed something that was constructed by man, and just the different tone of your skin doesn't make you a different race per se. I don't know, many people might not agree with that view, but because race is so embedded in who we are, some say it's kind of even an identity, but anthropologists will tell you that this is actually fact. Like race is a myth, and I think that will go a far way in just seeing people as people, and that could really help in providing that I mean, it's a small thing, but it could help in providing the springboard to lead in America into that unifying view of each other.
Thanks, Brian, for that. And when you were talking about early childhood education, I was reminded of the video that you shared with me of the PBS special from years and years ago, decades ago, of a teacher, courageous teacher who took an initiative to offer a racism exercise to a group of all white children, just based off of some arbitrary ideas, whether it's the color of their eyes or something else.
Jane Elliott is her name.
Yes, Jane Elliott, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have that link, thanks to you, Brian, on my on the group's webpage. So I definitely recommend others to check that out.
Yes.
Shahriar, I have a question for you that is specific to urban planning. Redlining, the systemic discriminatory practice of denying people of color access to products and services in America by deeming territories with residents of color undesirable to offer banking credit, started with the introduction of the FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, in 1934. Black Americans, who have around half the rate of homeownership as whites, are getting pushed out of the neighborhoods that they live in today due to gentrification now. With your urban planning experience, how do you see marginalized communities offered an equitable solution to housing?
Okay, it's very interesting that you asked me that question, because I have been reading this book here recently. I'm not finished with it, but I have read most of it. This book is really a good document as how gentrification is taking place, and it's not really just special to minorities, but also how elderly people, for example, or certain ethnic people are being pushed out of a neighborhood that they have lived there for generations. So going back to redlining, I think most of us understand that and know that in certain time, well, probably still is taking place, but in a different way, is that the loan was not given to minority people to live in certain neighborhoods. And so that's why it's called the redlining. There has been some rules and regulations and laws that have been passed and, in order to rectify that problem, but still exist. So gentrification is something that we have a neighborhood where certain ethnic groups or race or mostly elderly people live. They have lived there for a long time, and now the younger people with more money, they can come in and just little by little take over the neighborhood by buying those properties cheap and converting it into homes that are more expensive, and then it becomes unaffordable for the people who live there. This is in form of paying more taxes, or not being able to keep up with the neighborhood in a sense of look, and or certain people have been offered extensive money to sell their property, and then, as I say, is going to take over, and little by little the neighborhood is completely, after several years, is changing the look of it, and different people live there and all of that. So that's basically what we're talking about. Now, what can be done? Actually, to some extent, is a double-edged sword here, because some people can argue that, okay, if we leave those poor neighborhoods the way it is, it gets worse and worse, and it becomes very inhabitable. But on the other hand, if we allow these people to come and purchase the property and renovate them and change them and all of that is a kind of a reinvestment in the neighborhood that brings it back. So on one hand, you have people who are going to be relocated or removed from the neighborhoods. That's a negative part of this. And then on the other hand, the neighborhood can be reinvested in, much better renovated homes, better neighborhoods, and all of that. And of course, as part of that, it's more tax revenue for the government. Now, that can be solved, but it takes government intervention in a big way. And unfortunately, in many, many jurisdictions, that doesn't happen. The government does not want to interfere or intervention to a point to rectify that problem. Some of the things that can be done, for example, one of the reasons that a lot of people, especially elderly, being forced out of a neighborhood is because their taxes are going so high they cannot afford that, so they have to move out. So I think those people who have lived there for a long time and they have their own homes, they should be given a tax credit, or their taxes should not go up as a result of the neighborhood being livable or more expensive, I should say. So that is one of the biggest thing that the government can do to maintain certain people to live there. Then I think it can be some subsidized loan for interest, subsidizing the interest, so minority or certain people can actually afford to be there. I think the certain zoning regulations has to be modified in order to maintain the neighborhood or to provide additional income for those people to be able to maintain or stay in the neighborhood. For example, in certain neighborhoods, we could the zoning regulation doesn't allow people to say add to the house because it violates the setback to the property line or something like that, or they cannot put a small unit at the end of the yard in order to create another unit. So if those kind of regulations is modified, people can add to the home or create another small unit in their yard and to be rented out and make some more money, income, in order to be able to stay in their home. So that's another thing. I think some of those homes that are rental properties, they are being neglected. I think the building codes has to be enforced for those properties. I think another thing is to allow small businesses to operate in the neighborhood. For example, the zoning regulation doesn't allow in a single family home or even in the residential neighborhood where you have a high density in, development to have a small grocery store. In Canada, if you have traveled there, you can see that in some very many neighborhoods, there are some small grocery stores every other block. So what that helps is to revitalize the neighborhood and bring people out into the streets, which reduces the crime and all that. And also for elderly, they will be very close to the grocery store, so they don't have to travel. They don't have to drive. So they can walk there and get their food and come home. So that's another way of maintaining or keeping people in their neighborhood. I think if some developers are coming, and this happens in Baltimore, they come and buy the whole block of the neighborhood that is really inexpensive and needs revitalization, they buy the whole block and renovate the buildings, and block by block, those poor people are moved out and new people come in. I think we have some programs, for example, in Montgomery County, Maryland, where I used to work. Of course, it may not or may work, but I think that the concept is that if you building or creating 25 units together by a developer, they have to provide 12.5% low and moderate income housing. So some of those units has to be provided for moderate income people. So that's another way. So if developer comes and buy the whole block, they should be providing some moderate income housing units for people to stay there. I think another thing that is very important is not to change the character of the neighborhood. For example, what we call it mansionization. People come in and raise the building and build this huge mansion in the middle of the neighborhood that really is not, changing the character of the neighborhood. I think that's another thing. So these are some of the things that they can be done in order to stop or rectify the problems that we have with gentrification.
I really appreciated, Shahriar. That was really helpful. And those are some things that I hadn't thought about, including offering some loosening regulations when it came to zoning, for example, adding units to the property so that people that are currently living there have a second stream of income. Thank you for that.
Sure.
And Gator, you are not an immigrant to the United States, but you're an immigrant of sorts to the arts of hip hop. You as a white person are a minority in your field of rap and hip hop arts. What has your experience been like entering the genre, especially as it pertains to addressing your race compared to others? Were there moments when you felt particularly included or not included in the community?
So for me, growing up small town, things were a little differently then. It was almost kind of like this new thing when someone being white would step into something such as the hip hop field. Obviously you get the jokes of like, oh, Eminem, just the most well-known rappers and stuff. But it was always nothing but love. Like, I think for me, and that's hip hop is a black culture. It was started by black culture more so. And I think going into that, like, I fully respected that and I appreciated what they created in the movement that was going on with that. I mean, even beyond just rap, I taught hip hop dance for quite some time, and obviously being a DJ as well on top of that. So I had so many ties towards hip hop that it was like I said, it really boils down. It was nothing but love and respect from anyone I ever encountered, even if it was someone white also doing it, whether it was someone black in the field, any race for that matter. I think that's the one thing why I enjoyed what drew me into hip hop more so was because of the passion that comes with it. I really cannot say I've ever had any moments of what felt like racism, any moments that I feel like I was more included than I wasn't included. Like it's a lot different though, I will say, small town and experiencing everybody there, but then moving up here to Atlanta, obviously I'm about a year in now, it's such a bigger industry up here. So you can almost be, I use this word very loosely, but like outcasted in the aspect of I'm really a nobody coming into it up here. And that's okay, because for me, it's about the grind and about the hustle to try to get there and prove my point and show my respect to everybody that I'm coming across daily that has done it before me. I've spoken with you before, being friends, and one of the big things I've always said is respect more than anything. And if we can all sit down and have respectful conversations, understand that there are certain differences and certain things of culture basis and all that, but learn to love and appreciate it all. And I think that that's really what it boils down to of me coming into the field, is the love and appreciation I have for it is it holds a huge place in my heart. So, but the short answer is no, I can't really say I've faced the battles like anything of those terms. So
that's awesome, man. Your story speaks to not only the spirit of hip hop, which is great as someone who's a fan of hip hop, and being in Atlanta, it's hard not to be. And then also your draw to the arts, even though there weren't as many people that look like you. That's testament to the welcoming nature of the community, as well as your inspiration to join it.
Sure.
Good for you, man. We only have a few minutes left. If there are any participants that are looking to ask questions, please go ahead and share them in the Q&A section. But since we still have a few minutes, I wanted to throw out the rapid fire portion of the meeting, in which I'm going to make some statements and opinions, and then I'm going to get the take of whether a participant agrees or disagrees, meaning a panelist agrees or disagrees, to foster some robust conversation around important topics of today. I'm going to go in the same order that we started with Brian, Shahriar, and then Gator. This first topic is going to be around COVID-19. COVID-19 is a significant threat to the health of people across the world. Brian, do you agree or disagree?
Agree.
Okay. Shahriar?
Agree.
Gator?
Agree.
Okay. The world has done a good job at addressing COVID-19. Brian?
It's a tough one. Disagree.
Okay. Shahriar?
This is tough one. Some countries have done well, some not. But overall, yes.
Meaning disagree? Oh, meaning you agree
Yes,
with that statement?
agree.
Yes.
Okay, got it. And Gator?
And there's a tough one. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm gonna lean more towards the disagree. I'll just if I'm not giving explanations, but I'm gonna lean more towards the disagree side.
Sure. And in reverse order, Gator, could you say why you disagree?
I think there's a lot of oh God, what's the best way to say this? There's a lot of here's the way I word it. COVID-19 is real. The pandemic itself is real. Fighting the flu-like system and doing all that, like that whole concept is real. But I think there's a lot of media and a lot of craziness and a lot of opinions and a lot of so much going on towards something that's still so unknown that it's hard for me to. There's no. Once again, I've said it. I don't think there's a right and a wrong answer for a lot of things. Right? Well, I think there is some wrong answers, but but yeah, I hope that kind of sums that up. So
sure, Shahriar, why do you agree that the world has done a good job?
Well, as I said, this was a tough question, but I think when you look at the entire world and the population, I think majority of countries with big populations have controlled the problem well. So if majority of the population of the world are doing relatively well, then I should say yes, I agree.
Okay. Sure. I can understand your logic there. And Mr. Halstead, Brian, why do you disagree?
Well, I disagree mainly because of the deniability that a lot of countries, large countries, of the approach they have taken to COVID-19, even though it continued to kill a lot of people. You know, Brazil, for instance, United States, I should have said that first, for instance. You know, we could have done a way better job, you know, in handling COVID-19 here. And the fact that we continue to make it more of a political issue when it is in and what I mean by that, you know, who's wearing mask and who's not wearing mask, and listen to the people who really know. Like, you know, if you're sick, you go to the doctor. So if the doctor gives you a recommendation when there's a pandemic, I think it's in your interest to listen and follow those guidelines and not make it into politics. And that's deniability of the damage that caused. I mean, hopefully it hasn't directly affected any of us, but to lose a family member, you know, tear me to pieces, you know, for something like this, and to have someone or you know, a country continue to not take this with the level of seriousness that it deserves, you know, it really is painful to watch.
I can understand all three of your points and your perspectives, and I think that speaks to what the spirit of this march is about hearing people that come from different backgrounds and the experiences that they're experiencing today or over the past few decades. And with that, we are actually past 5:30 Eastern Standard Time, so I'm going to wrap things up. I appreciate all of the panelists. Thank you so much for making time to come on and share your opinions, your thoughts, and your experiences. I appreciate it very much. Participants, Arun, thank you for the shout out, and thank you for everyone else that logged in to pay attention and to hear what these three fellows had to say. I was very appreciative of their time and their sharings. And if you're interested in learning more about our march and hearing more from us moving forward, or even recordings that we've had in the past, please take a look at our Facebook page, which have the Zoom webinar recordings, and which will also be the forum that will have our future recordings. You should receive an invite at the end of this webinar to hear more about what's coming up in the future. Before I go, I want to give a small plug-in for John Holley, aka Gator. Gator, where can we find your music, and what do you have coming up that we should look out for?
Yeah, just honestly, I'm pretty much on all streaming platforms. I'll allow them all to have it. I'm a firm believer in that. So Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, Tidal, it's pretty much out there. I released my first EP at the start of quarantine, and I'm starting to release singles every few weeks right now. I actually got a new one coming out this Friday.
Awesome. Awesome. Congrats.
Feel free to follow me, look up Gator, and the easiest way to find it is probably type in my first EP. It's called Imperfect. So that'd be the Gator, and Imperfect will find you, because there are multiple other Gators in the world. So unfortunately.
Hey, there's only one Gator in my heart when it comes to hip hop.
I appreciate it.
For sure, man. It was great to see you folks, and thank you for sharing.
Awesome.
It was a pleasure. Take care, guys. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.